This is Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. Buying this game, any game on the Xbox Store, the affiliate link in the video description goes to Microsoft Store sports content on the channel. So what are we getting here? It's 1080p, 60 FPS, auto HDR, and it is just one of the most classic and definitely the most important Call of Duty entry ever, as it really did set the stage with Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare back in the day in 2007. That gave us so many cool things, not only from a single player, but also from a multiplayer perspective, which we will be showcasing a little later on. So let's dive in and let's talk about this experience. Obviously, it is a remaster. It retains that original version and scale and scope of what that groundbreaking Call of Duty game had so many years ago. Things, of course, have changed. Things have been upgraded, and the textures have been completely revamped. It looks fantastic. Now, that being said, with the 1080p, it is a little jaggedy in regards to what it could be. You know, sadly, Infinite Warfare, which is what this was kind of like bundled with when it launched, got itself a big upgrade for the One X, but this one never did, so we're kind of stuck with that original version and style. That being said, it's still incredible, and the definitive way to play Call of Duty 4, well, Modern Warfare. So yeah, I do quite like that original version. It's still kind of neat to take a look at, but I think the, technological improvements that we get here definitely do make this a better experience, as it is that exact same style and gameplay and everything like that, but it just looks way better. way better. Now, the game features a few different difficulty options if you want something a little bit more intense, and collectibles in the form of, well, basically these like laptops that are intel that you find around the map. The game was really interesting from a story perspective because this is when they really did kind of define what a shooter was really going to be for, even to today. Because, while the series has been rebooted, a lot of the elements and trademark aspects of this series continue to borrow and lean on what was started with this original, Modern Warfare experience. So yeah, this game focused on heavy cinematic moments, gripping, intense, mature Modern Warfare action and conflict. The whole battle for the weapons of mass destruction, you got a couple perspectives. From one side, like these, Marines going in, getting the job done. With this other perspective, this intensive task force going around and doing the missions, the others can't and stuff like that. And, some beloved characters and some neat twists and turns in this one, and some really shock and awe moments throughout. It had these huge, intensive moments where you get to use some very powerful tools. You got to get some really cool flashbacks where you got to experience a Gillies in the Mist sort of time, as some would say, as I guess I'm keeping that somewhat spoiler-free for those jumping into it for the first time. I always try my best to do that. But yeah, that original experience is alive here, and it looks and feels way better than it ever did. But it plays exactly as you remember it, and that is ever so important for a remaster of such, an iconic and important game in this franchise. And for shooters in general, like, the whole Modern Warfare angle was a big deal. And then to see that so many years on kind of getting upgraded and then giving us the full package here was remarkable, because obviously with the Modern Warfare 2 Remastered, they stripped the multiplayer because this version was too successful, and, that's kind of funny, but, and also kind of sad if you really love Modern Warfare 2 and wanted that full package. But yeah, this campaign is just absolutely incredible. It's got all of those gripping moments and surprises and just like times that leave you in awe, kind of being like, whoa, I can't believe that literally just happened. What is this? Is this the end of this? Whoa. And it's a self-contained story too. Like, it's a narrative. Whoa, I think I needed smoke there. Yep, I think I needed some smoke to deal with a gunner. My bad. It had those moments that just left like lingering thoughts towards you, these intense messages when you die, which were always funny. But yeah, it just really did have some crazy stuff going on, but it was like a self-contained narrative. It was one where it was kind of like, you're doing this big heroic mission, but it almost seemed a little small scale compared to what eventually happened with Modern Warfare 2 and then Modern Warfare 3 down the road, you know, where it became like a global adventure, you know, more like the US in the second one, the third one, like a global situation. And it was fascinating to see that, like, transition from something that was, like, you know, very much at the time, like, you know, this whole Middle Eastern type conflict was, like, really the big thing going on at that moment, was for a very, very long time. And it was so topical, and then so many games were kind of following, you know, sort of suit with this one. It was really quite an interesting time, I think. It was definitely a fascinating time. Not only in gaming, but, like, you know, geopolitically and all that, too. And this game just mirrored that so perfectly well. And then you're coming back here, and you're seeing a game that looks much, much more realistic. But, you know, we're, like, what, several years on now. We're almost at the point where I'm sitting here being like, I wonder if this one will get a, you know, another remaster, or, like, I don't know if you would remake this experience, because obviously they've, like, rebooted the franchise, right? But just kind of wondering what another remastering on top of this would eventually do, because I think you could push the visuals and the tech of this franchise, or, well, this entry a lot more. And to me, that would be really interesting, because it is, again, such a beloved thing for myself. I just hope that they keep it kind of getting updated. I worry that, you know, it'll kind of get forgotten over time, especially as they keep bringing back other ones, because this one is just so particularly important and special. How did that guy get that way and end up over there? See, I'm fighting a war on multiple fronts, and that guy's just, like, casually walking by like I'm not even in the middle of, like, a big conflict here. That's ridiculous. But yeah, I really do, like, this is genuinely one of the most important games in my life, and ooh, seeing this one, you know, getting upgraded like this was so refreshing, because I was like, oh wow, people are going to be able to check out a game that I love so much, you know, some for the first time. And I think, to me, that's really, really quite magical. You guys were over here this whole time, but you weren't doing anything to help me out? That's fantastic, squad. But it just, like, it does look really, really detailed, but I keep sitting here being like, oh, well, you know, if they were pushing this a little bit more or that, I'm like, I think it could be even more technologically impressive now, but I'm always going to be happy that we got this upgrade. You know, that we got this improvement, because it really does allow me to enjoy an experience just with a little bit of a refreshed visual aesthetic and style. Okay, did not mean to do that. But yeah, it was really crazy, and you had all these characters and this interesting setup, but it felt like, you know, it was like a one-and-done journey, and then little did I know it was just gonna start to get even more wild as additional releases kind of came, as sequels went by. As it eventually got rebooted, it's fascinating. It really genuinely is. That's something that, like, came out at one point, and I was experiencing freshly, literally got remastered at some point, and then has all of these other, you know, kind of titles that followed suit of it. Like, I think you really won't realize time going by until you've seen something that you really enjoyed and loved getting, you know, not only a remaster, but also getting, like, rebooted, because that's just, like, that is time roaring on. But this one, and its campaign in particular, just holds incredibly steady and ready to go, with just these big action-packed moments, these crazy set pieces, this gripping campaign element that I think they absolutely, like, they nailed. Like, this campaign is iconic. It's great. It's such a time capsule, too, because it represents, like, thoughts of the era, people, and, like, you know, what was going on and everything like that, and then just sort of put that into a gaming perspective that you could, like, realize and live. And I think they really did just nail this one in terms of gameplay. I had a little bit of a controller hiccup there, but yeah, no, they really did absolutely provide something shocking, exciting, thrilling. The twists, the turns, the action, the intensity of it, answering the Call of Duty in a way that we hadn't prior, because this really did drag us out of, like, the World War II era. Basically, like, forcibly drag the entire shooter industry out of that era and into something, you know, modern and full of weird conflicts and concepts that we're seeing even today, which is rather thrilling and exciting. What a crazy time it's been. So yeah, the multiplayer really was just some incredible experience back in the day. It brought so many firsts to what a shooter could be, and it really did set the foundation for literally the template of what the series is all these years later on. I stopped and I was like, oh, what should I do? And I just accepted that explosion from that claymore, which wasn't good. But you know, this was like literally the first time we had prestiging. So prestiging in this game goes even beyond the 10 prestige system back in the day. Like, it really does kind of go infinitely on, which is wild. It brought in custom classes, which, you know, we've seen many different versions of custom classes over the years, but, you know, that was really brought in with this entry. The perk system, you know, perks have come and changed and have been adjusted throughout the years, but relatively that concept is, you know, about the same. Gun skins, you know, to the degree that we were here, I mean, you earn them, and this game added more gun skins and some, like, loot crate type gun skins, which isn't, like, necessarily the best, but, you know, it really did kind of take that original experience, and I think it just sort of, like, it just added to it. It wasn't, like, I didn't feel like things took away, but anyways, to the next match. So yeah, that match probably wasn't the best showcase since it was basically almost over, but I did want to get a little bit overgrown in if I could because it is such a classic level. But yeah, like I was saying, they did add things to this experience, and I don't think they necessarily took anything away from the setup. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some disagreements. You know, there's some extra guns they added where I was like, these are non-canon. But I wasn't too bothered because they were updating and supporting something I loved so much, and they were giving us a couple new maps. Even though the maps are just kind of like reskins of other levels, it was something new to enjoy, some stuff that refines some things. And if anything, I wish they would have taken that further and kept adding to this, but, you know, I think even getting the additions was mostly because this game was, like, really outshining at certain points Infinite Warfare, which is kind of funny because, you know, this was, like I said earlier, if you watched the campaign bit, this was bundled with Infinite Warfare, so I can see where they were a bit not happy that this one was doing so well because they thought it would be like a quick nostalgia thing. They didn't think people would have such a preference to this one, which of course they were obviously mistaken because it's Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, right? You remastered one of the most beloved shooter games of all time. Of course people are gonna, like, you know, stick to it and enjoy what it has to offer. I also want to mention that my team has a bunch of first-time players, and their team has, like, a bunch of level of thousands. So they've kind of played this game quite a bit. But yeah, it had all of the stuff that you remember, and they were just adding more to it. It didn't fundamentally change anything. You just got more to enjoy, which I was largely quite fine with. You know, it didn't really ruin anything, and that to me is important because I was kind of, like, a little bit worried at the time when they were announcing that they were, like, adding to this. I was kind of like, oh no. You know, please don't mess it up. But I think overall it was fine. I'm just sour, like, we didn't get the resolution bump up that we deserve for this one, but it is what it is. It's still a great game. It's still awesome. I just love it. So yeah, let's talk about other things. The kill streaks, you know, simpler in this one, obviously. You know, you got your UAV, you got your airstrike. It's not like later entries in the series where there's a bazillion different kill streaks, but that was a fresh thing and that was part of this one. A lot of the maps were like, or some of the maps at least, were from the campaign, so yeah, it's just got like such a bad team compared to the other squad. I'm doing my best out here, you know what I mean? I'm trying, but it's like, literally their team is too successful against my squad. I'm overwhelmed, but I'm giving it my all. It's still pretty good at this one, what can I say? But yeah, no, it's really, really, to me, intriguing that this one has stood the test of time. Some of these levels are still iconic and used today, but so many of them were, like, literally, like, campaign-type levels. So they don't have necessarily the traditional flow that you would get from the later entries where the multiplayer maps are so kind of, like, fine-tuned and particularly, like, tweaked and set up in a way that they, like, work more functionally as multiplayer maps. That's totally fine too, because it was just creative, the designs and everything like that from that perspective. And then, like, there's all these different guns and stuff in this game, and if you're just looking at the different gun options. They were really intense, but there was like a lot more like recoil and, you know, a lot more like earning stuff, right? Like getting earned gun skins, and you know, there was a lot of toys, but it was more streamlined, you know, it's like claymores and stuff, and it felt really, really balanced and focused on like fine-tuned elements. How did my teammate not get that guy? That's crazy. Here we go, it's another classic level. But yeah, this one really did refine the multiplayer experience in some really exciting ways. It set the stage for literally the games we're enjoying now. So much of that stuff comes from what this original concept provided in terms of like how a shooter would be evolved. And then to see this one kind of go like toe to toe as like a secondary part of like a later game and still being something that so many people prefer. People literally like grabbing Infinite Warfare just to play this because it was bundled initially, and it was only like later on that they debundled it and allowed you to buy it separately. I always thought that was a little bit crazy, and then like this one was so overly successful. You know, when they did Modern Warfare 2 Remastered, they gutted the multiplayer so that it wouldn't, you know, compete and split their player base from the new COD, because, you know, they wouldn't make as much money off of that sort of thing, which is, to me, kind of hilarious that that even is a concept. But, you know, a shame for Modern Warfare 2 not being able to have its full package upgraded and stuff like that, because typically when things don't get remastered, you know, they get kind of like left behind, which is not ideal. But at least for COD 4, it's all here. It's all beautifully available. It all plays well. It's got a good amount of players that enjoy it all the time. Always able to easily find matches. And it's just, it's so nice to always have an excuse to, like, or when I have an excuse to be able to go back and play and have a good time with this one. And then, like, talking about the different, like, game modes and stuff, too, is really, really quite exciting, because there was, like, you know, you're mostly just fighting deathmatch these days, but, you know, Headquarters was, like, such a big deal, and it was, like, a huge game that I used to play with my pals all the time. That was, like, our primary kind of game mode. Okay, I was really hoping that that other guy would line up. Well, at least I got them Ultra Dom. But yeah, this one really had some fun quirks to it, but it felt really grounded, too. I think that was the big thing. Is it just coming from, like, you know, World War II shooters, which were pretty gritty and stuff, and then this one continued that, and then, you know, some entries here or there get, like, a little bit more arcadey, but I think this one just really fine-tunedly hit the mark. That's why it's always considered one of the greatest multiplayer games ever. Was it just seemed like the whole experience was almost based around multiplayer. It felt like, because the multiplayer was so good. And it's just crazy that nowadays, because of this game, we have so many things like, you know, custom classes, skill streaks, the perk system, prestiging in video games, the aggressive leveling, the constant playing of it. It's a little bit weird that they didn't focus on more DLC for this game, considering like how much money it was making, but I think they were more focused on getting the sequel going and the sequel out the door, because I know there was, you know, big hunger. Like, obviously Modern Warfare 2 too, like, really got more people involved and stuff, which was crazy. But yeah, this is just such a fun game. Always something that I enjoy, you know, going to and playing and taking a look at and enjoying the action of it, because I still think I'm pretty good at it. You know, I have some pretty good moments of playing it, and it just feels like such a nostalgic thing for me, but something that's still fresh, because they've upgraded, you know, all the maps were upgraded. Everything looks better than it ever did, and it all plays smoothly. I just, yeah, that one disappointment for me is not getting the, that higher resolution going. It's very disappointing, because I think this one could look, like, it looks good, but it looked really, really clean and sharp. So it's just that, like, one little aspect of it that kind of holds it back from being, like, even today, something that's, like, super, super nice looking. So I do hope eventually we get to see this effort, you know, kind of updated, pushed forward, but I am just happy that this game is present, available, something I can continue to enjoy, something I can share with other people, because I loved it so much. And yeah, it is funny how one game has a legacy where you're playing the remastered version of it, and it's been rebooted on top of that. And the remastered version is like several years old, and you're kind of like, wow, time is flying by, I'm getting old. Kind of wild, crazy, yeah, just can't believe that. But anyways, Call of Duty Modern Warfare is awesome. The remastered version's great. It upgrades that vision and just kind of keeps it going for a little bit longer.